Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whatever time zone it is, whether you in the world, it is your Lore Saviour. And today I'm going to be reviewing Todd McFarlane's 1990 and 1991 run of the Adjectiveless Spider-Man, because fuck it, why not? This week, as the video is being published, it's going to be my 30th birthday, which is such a weird fucking thing to be tripping out of my mouth, but here we are, I guess. So, I think it is allowed for me to talk about something that isn't horror or TTRPG related, and you're legally not allowed to say anything nasty about that in the comments below, or anything about me at all, because it will just make me very sad. And you don't want to make somebody sad on their birthday. That'd be a real fucking cuntish thing to do. But there is a reason why I'm wanting to explore this, because I'm using the birthday and the birthday week as a bit of a justification for that. But there is a actual reason as to why I wanted to talk a little bit about this. Now, the goats among you would have watched my Marvel Multiverse RPG unboxing video, which is going to appear in the corner up there now, because I know that most of you haven't watched that, because that is one of the many videos this year that have flopped because it is so out of pocket for the things that I'm used to talking about, or rather people are used to hearing me talk about. The reason why I've gotten into that, because I've been vaguely aware that it existed, and I knew that Spider-Man was in it because of course Spider-Man was going to be in the core book, but I knew that there was an expansion book called the Spider-Verse source book, or expansion book as they call it, that was talking about the various different Spider people, the Spider-Verses, and different powers and systems that are suited towards Spider-Verse campaigns, and that pricked my ears up because I have always loved Spider-Man. I refer to myself as a lifelong casual fan, and I word it as such because despite watching all the different cartoons and playing most of the video games and seeing most of the films, I haven't seen the latest Spider-Verse films, funny enough. I haven't actually sat down and read any of the comics. Like, an exception to that is that when I was a kid, I got hold somehow by someone, Ultimate Spider-Man comic. I want to say it was issue 6, which is the introduction of the Green Goblin when he attacks the high school and he knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And I would read that back to back, you know, knowing that it was Spider-Man and liking it, and just a bit confused why this Green Goblin isn't around on a glider. I didn't understand the whole Spider-Verse thing then. It wasn't really a concept then at that point. And it would only be a little bit later when I would play Ultimate Spider-Man on the PS2 that I'd realise, okay, this is a different version of Spider-Man, because Rhino's different, Venom's different, the Beetle's different, Shocker is different as well. It's all just a little bit different. Peter Parker's a little younger here as well. So I kind of understood that, and it was just the name that was assigned to it. But I never really looked at any of the comics in greater detail beyond that one that I read and at some point threw out because it was just falling apart, because I just kept going backwards and forwards with it all the time, just reading it back to front, upside down, etc. and so forth. And so part of the reason why I never really got into comics is because in the UK it's not really much of a thing, at least from my experience. So I was never really encouraged by anybody to, like, to pick up and read a comic, and later years when I thought about doing it, you know, funny enough, Spider-Man, it was just difficult to come by, because I'd much rather just read like a whole collection of things, which is difficult when you've got like a 60-year-old product that's been going on for all of that time, pretty much non-stop. Like, where do you even begin? I mean, a good place to start with anything is at the beginning, but seeing how expensive, like, the first volume of the Spider-Man run, the Amazing Spider-Man run by Stan Lee and some other fuck whose name I've completely forgotten, the cheapest I could ever find, it was like 100-ish quid. No thank you. That is like really fucking difficult to get into. And then you've got all the different Spider-Verses and people and the different settings and whatnot, which again are all fairly expensive, and I was prepared to splash a bit of money on a big collection of books like I did with the Walking Dead comics I did earlier this year. Go and check that out in the corner up there, where I read and reviewed every single volume issue of the Walking Dead comics. I didn't know where to begin. I wanted something that was easily accessible, you know, money-wise, something that wasn't too big, and also art style and writing-wise that was going to be engaging enough for me to potentially get into the world of Spider-Man comics. Not so much as a huge comic book enthusiast, per se, but somebody who just likes Spider-Man and just wants to read a bit here and there, which is where that comes in, because I was doing a bit of research online and going through eBay and like doing the very generic Spider-Man omnibus or collection, and this popped up. And this copy was the cheapest I could find. It was about 20 quid, which I will say, as a mild spoiler, I'm very glad that I only paid 20 quid for that, because it is rather short. It's about 400-ish pages, I believe, but it does not feel like that at all. Maybe it's just how quickly I read it, and also the fact that comics are laid out, which I'm not going to pretend I have any knowledge about, but everything did feel a bit on the short side for me, but that's later on in this video. But when I initially saw this, I was sort of really taken aback by the really cool art style, and Todd McFarlane, from my understanding, sort of revolutionised the whole presentation and take on comics in the 90s. And he wrote, drew and inked Spider-Man in this particular collection, and this is known as his Adjectiveless, that's a weird fucking word to say, run of Spider-Man, because you had like this amazing Spider-Man, the spectacular Spider-Man, later would be the Ultimate Spider-Man, but this is just Spider-Man. And I believe it is connected a bit to the Amazing Spider-Man universe setting, because it does present some of the characters in some of the way where you would have to have some understanding about things that happened prior to fully appreciate the narrative, which fortunately I did, but I guess if somebody had picked this up for the first time, they may be a bit confused by all of that. But anyway, going back to what I was originally saying before analysing and reviewing it, before actually analysing and reviewing things, I thought this art style was really cool. Like the massive eyes there, of over-the-top exaggerated positions, like the squatting and the twisted hands, this wild chaotic webbing that's going on here, which you can't see properly. I've just realised that it's going to be on the screen somewhere now as I'm talking about this. Like, this style of webbing I would learn would be called spaghetti webbing, because you open the book and just see him web swinging across New York, that this webbing is just all over the fucking place, like spaghetti, like the loops and hoops round of it, going back to his body positions and that of his foes and alliances. So it's so over the top and exaggerated, like it's not what I expect from comics, where it's like square, rectangle, square, all next to each other. Like you've got whole pages of little box cutouts. There's a bit in it where it's just his face that's just covering a whole side of a screen, like a load of boxes down the side. And the way that he draws capes, particularly with the villains, the Lizard and Hobgoblin, which are actually the only characters in here with capes, so over the top. It is so unnecessarily over the top, but it definitely has a very brooding, edgy, like, persona with that. And of course, being the thing of the 90s was very much the in thing, and I do like a little bit of 90s edge here and there. I can't really discredit that too much. It doesn't seem too offensive, its writing style, for the most part, because there's a little bit towards the end that I feel a bit iffy about. And the writing for this isn't really all that great either. I suppose we're getting into the review of it now. I should stop like hiding and dancing around it. The writing isn't fantastic, but as this is, from my understanding, the first attempt that Todd had like written for any big comic, I knew that he had the ideas for Spawn in the back of his head that he wasn't prepared to give up to Marvel, but that was his and his only, which he would then take to iComics, I believe. It's coincidentally the same company that would produce, or publish I should say, the Walking Dead comics. And the design for that is very similar, and that with the villain, the Prowler, I believe the geezer's name is. Like, it's all very cool and over the top. But going back to the arts, going back to the written work, it's not the most deeply nuanced, it's not the most well written, and again, a lot of it has that very brooding 90s edgy sort of vibe to it. Actually, you get most of this within the first part, which collects four-ish, like three-ish stories, I believe. So the first one's with the Lizard, the first one has the Hobgoblin, the first one has the Wendigo, which I'm going to shorten to Dio or Digo or whatever, but I'll try and refrain from using that more than once. Then there's a one with Mobius, which is the one that I have issues with, and then there's a crossover between X-Force and Spider-Man are taking on the Juggernaut, which presentation-wise is the only one I don't like, because you're not reading a portrait, you're reading it as a landscape theme, which, from my understanding, was again fairly revolutionary. And I know there was a fairly famous correction that Todd McFarlane had to do, where he had to censor the Juggernaut being stabbed in the eye with a knife. I think that's actually shown at the back of this book, because including in all these comics, there's some like letters things that they would send out to subscribers. Like, I don't know how it works, but there's like some letters that Marvel / Todd / whatever will like put out for fans to read or whatever. Again, I don't really know how that works, but it's a nice little addition to having this connectors piece. Like, you can see for the difference in the lighting, the greater bit that takes up most of the volume here is the comics that are collected, and then the white bit is all those like extra detail letter things. And it's also nice that at the beginning of each comic story, you have the original comic front panel, which again isn't showing all that well, so they're going to peer over there now. But it's a nice little collector's detail that before each one starts, you've got what the comic looks like, rather than just having like a standard title face page, which, comparing it to my earlier read of The Walking Dead, it would have been nice if like those comic covers are presented with each breakup in the narrative as well, because it just at times did feel like I was reading a one big continuous story, which might have actually been a good thing now that I think about it. It doesn't feel too comic booky, that it does feel like an ongoing drama. But from a collector's standpoint, with these huge 4 volumes, I think people might have wanted that. But regardless, like I think it's a really nice touch that this is done all the way through. Just also for somebody like me who has no real understanding about the development of comics, who wasn't ever really part of that culture. Obviously, I've seen comics before and have like a general idea what they look like on a stereotypical level, but it's just so cool to see, like, again, you got the lizard there with like the over the top exaggerated body proportions, you got so much bright colours and shit. Like, it's so vibrant, but yet at the same time a lot of this is quite dark, which is what I didn't really expect from a Spider-Man like series of comics at all. Yeah, he has his darker moments in the stories, but there are some elements of supernatural horror in here, particularly with the first story and the one with Dio, or Dio, I should probably say. Dio probably works a lot better than for Igo, you know? Igo, I don't know. You know who I mean, if I mean Dio or Go. Where Spider-Man is out and about and the lizard is being possessed by this, like, African sorceress witch queen person who's got a fitting for Craven, who poisons Spider-Man with using the claws of the lizard, whose like claws are like tipped with poison or whatever to try and take him down. But Spider-Man, being the OP goat that he is able like to push his way through, and he's kind of helpless really in that sort of situation, not able to fight back or do much. He's barely able to escape the situation, and quite frankly, now that I'm thinking about it, Spider-Man doesn't really defeat any of the foes in these comics. He managed to get away from the lizard and this queen sorceress woman who probably has a name, but it's certainly not mentioned here. The encounter with Hobgoblin is probably my favourite one, just because of the presentation, the art style, and that one's the most horror related, just because the Hobgoblin is on this weird religious Christian crusade and he starts capturing people who he deems unworthy, and he kills a boy's mother in front of him and then indoctrinates him into some sort of cult that he's working on, and completely deforms and defigurates his face, which is messed up, honestly. And it gets the Ghost Rider involved, who sees Hobgoblin as a threat, and it sort of begins a bit of a rivalry between him and Spider-Man, as Ghost Rider and Spider-Man have clearly got two different ideas about how to deal with villains and justice, and in many ways they're different sides of the same coin, and in many ways they're all just as stubborn as each other, which is really cool to see. Dio Igo again isn't really sorted by Spider-Man either, because in that one he teams up with Wolverine, and I like with that one that it requires Spider-Man to go to Canada as part of like some science research things that he's doing. I think it's also connected to the Daily Bugle as well. Stuff's happening over there and they want pictures of the Daily Bugle, they being J. Jonah Jameson. And he's doing his investigation thinking there's a killer, discovers about the presence of Dio, which I think, or at least it's very much implied, is the first introduction of the character. I could be mistaken, but that was very much the impression that I got going into this. And he has to team up with Wolverine, who, again, like Ghost Rider, has a very different way of dealing with things. Like, he's wanting to protect Dio because, you know, it's just a monster, a beast, you know, protecting itself, and the humans are the bad ones here. And that one does get pretty dark as well, because it's actually a police officer who is the villain in that one, because it's a bit of a sex pest sort of thing, or that's something to being heavily implied here, which again is pretty fucking dark, remembering the fact that comics are being sold to kids, which isn't me like clutching my pearls and getting really het up about it. I do think it should be made aware that maybe not the police are going to be your best friends, that maybe you shouldn't trust somebody because of their position or their rank or power. Like, it's dark, and it's something that needs to be taught to everyone, I feel. And just going back to the artwork, I do absolutely love the way that Wolverine is drawn here. Like, something that I feel that a lot of sources forget is that Wolverine is very much an animal with his powers. Like, he's got heightened senses and smells, and that's tapped into quite a bit here. And it's presented in the artwork that he is like some sort of like rabid animal, almost like on the hunt, sort of thing, like the lighter side to Dio in some respect. And I just love the way that Todd is able to portray him, and integrating the costumes, because at one point it gets torn or he tears it off for some reason, and it goes from the yellow and brown to the classic yellow and blue, which I think was being quite apt because it was just about to lead into the 90s animated X-Men show, I believe. I don't know when that all was coming out, but I'm pretty sure that must have been in the know here. Or maybe Todd just decided that's what he was going to do because he prefers the yellow and blue. I mean, Todd McFarlane is the one who created Venom, after all, because he didn't want Spider-Man in the black suit anymore. So he then moved it onto Eddie Brock, which then in turn made Venom out of it, which I absolutely adore, and I have a lot of respect for Todd McFarlane for that alone. Just because I really like Venom. Venom is like one of my favourite villains and anti-villains of all time. I just love the symbiote monster thing, and Marvel Rivals with that twerking emo has just made Venom all the more fucking hot, in my totally slutty opinion. So the story with Wolverine and Dio. Wolverine is the one that does all the heavy lifting here, and Spider-Man does a little bit here and there. But I do like it in that story is that you have a lot of Peter Parker like doing investigation work as well, showing the charm and eloquence that Peter can have, and how he's very resourceful, like hearing and getting contacts for this, that and the other, whatever he's looking for. That it's not just Spider-Man that can do stuff, Peter Parker can do quite a lot as well, which I liked that was showcased fairly well here too. And then you have the last story, and I'm not going to be talking much about the X-Forces one, because I won't lie, all of that went over my head. That did absolutely nothing for me, purely because I had no connection to the X-Force. I didn't know who they were or what I was really reading. I'm aware of Juggernaut, and I think he's a very interesting concept for a character, but I was just sort of overwhelmed by who are these X-Force people? Why am I now reading this in fucking landscape? Like, it didn't do much for me, so maybe in a future time I could come back to it and like properly appreciate it, but that didn't do much for me, so I'm not really going to talk much about it here. Which isn't to say that it was bad either, it just really didn't do much for me. But then you have the last story with Mobius, which has Spider-Man back in the black suit, because there are these like hobo homeless people who are like kidnapping people from the surface who are considered to be bad people, and Mobius is using these people and their leader to bring down dregs of society, like bad people, to feed upon, because Mobius is a vampire, and he has that whole moral dilemma of like being a vampire, he doesn't want to be a vampire, he's constantly trying to find a cure to get rid of his vampirism, but of course he has to feed, so that's why he's using these homeless and disabled and inbreds. That is what they are, like the comic even just outright states this, to bring him food essentially, but they're so stupid, and no, stupid's not the right word, like they're so naive to the world above them, they're just bringing any and everyone and just assuming that it's bad, and that puts Mobius in a bit of a moral crisis, like he's been feeding and killing like innocent people, and he just fucks off. And the reason why they put Spider-Man in the black suit is because the red and blue is attracting too much attention, so they put him in the black suit and to do the thing, which Mary Jane doesn't like, because she's absolutely triggered and traumatized by her first encounter with Venom and all the symbiote stuff that went with that, but mainly about the appearance of Venom and how she just associates the two there. And it's not like a symbiote suit, it was the fact that somebody had a suit made for him, so he goes in there to be sort of camouflaged with the dark, but then he realizes it's not actually doing much good, so I kind of now feel that it was a decision that he had to be in the black suit for some sort of reason. Well, I'm not particularly fond of this story because it's not a very nice portrayal of people who are disabled, and also inbred and the homeless. It's sort of used a bit of a convenient plot device. It's very... I think it borderlines the offensive in terms of the characters, about how they're presented. Yes, it's grotesque and it's very well drawn, blah blah blah, but... And also it's the 90s, so it's a different era, I suppose. And although it does sort of cover, you know, taking advantage of people who are easily to take advantage of, which is good in a way, I just think the way that it was handled, it was just a little bit crass. And I think the way that Todd could have done that could have been better. And he has spoken about, from my understanding, like things he would do differently. I don't know if that comes under one of it, but again, it was a whole period thing, so I'm trying not to be too annoyed with it, because at least there is some merit in there to praise that it does kind of highlight that you really shouldn't be taking advantage or using people who are easy to take advantage of. So that's something, I suppose. But again, that's not something that Spider-Man discovers and beats Mobius with. It's like the leader of these homeless inbreds who's not stupid, like he's got his wits about him, that he's a bit more familiar with the world above him, and the rest of them aren't. But despite that, I did actually manage to have a really fun time reading this. Yeah, the writing wasn't fantastic, but it was just enough for me to be engaged with, and it was, for me, all about that fast-paced action and some of those more human interactions. Like, there are loads of instances of Pete and Mary Jane, of course, interacting together. Some of it borderlines like tongue-in-cheek adult humour, which again I quite like, because, you know, it shows they're in a mature relationship, and Todd McFarlane was clearly wants to like tap into that element of things as well. He borderlines horror, the supernatural things. You might as well just have a little sex joke here and there, or imply that some like very spicy Spidey BDSM stuff's about to happen. Like, it's all really good fun, and I, despite like reading it in a day, because again it's rather short, and I'm glad that I didn't pay like 30-40 quid for this. It was actually closer to 20. What is actually the original sale price on this? It doesn't have it in English pounds. It has $49 or 50 Canadian dollars. Yeah, I wouldn't buy this for 50. Like, if you can get it for much cheaper on eBay, go for that. I know there's also the Marvel Unlimited thing, which like you can read it digitally, so if you want to do that, I'd recommend doing that as well, because it's not too much. But it's not something that I want to do, because I don't want to be giving Disney too much of my money. Especially when it's something, for me, a fairly expensive venture, and I wouldn't use it regularly, so that's why I'm trying to collect a little bit here and there. But yeah, I'm just going back to my overall thoughts of the comic in this very waffly, roundabout, not very structured review. I really enjoyed it. I'm very happy that this was my first introduction into Spider-Man, which I think for most people will be a pretty good introduction to Spider-Man as well. It does set up like the basic levels. Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider. It's all done within the first comic, so it's got a few villains here and there. You don't really need to know too much. Like, you see that this guy called Kraven had his head blown off, and it's like, okay, who's Kraven? Who's like relation to Spider-Man and this woman? Like, if you know, you know. But overall, there weren't that many instances where I was confused as to why certain things were happening. I'm not sure why Hobgoblin had all like these weird powers and beams coming out of his hand, and I think he has like a spectral glider at one point as well. I know there is a variation of the Goblin villain in Spider-Man that can do all of that, so I don't know if that was like transitioning from one to the other. I think it's called Demi-Goblin or something like that. So that was the only thing that I was concerned about, and it's also, and because it's highlighted in the book, okay, Goblin's got new fucking powers for some reason. I'm guessing it was setting it up for something else, which is absolutely fine, but it did have me puzzled a little bit. So who knows, maybe I'll find that comic one day that explains all of that, or maybe it's just like the Goblin sim that's just done something particularly spicy with him. It's a good starting point, I feel, for anyone that's wanting to get into a Spider-Man comic. Says somebody whose very first read fairly recently was Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, and I think you'll have a good time with it. And if you're a long-time fan who for whatever reason doesn't have this, I think it's worth adding to your collection as well. I do know there was a variant of this cover where it's got Spider-Man in the same pose in the black suit. If I can find a decent picture of it, it's going to be on screen now, but it's sort of like, I can't put the glare, it's sort of presented like that. You can, but obviously not red, but you've just got the black suit, the symbiote thing there, and all the spaghetti webbing that's going around the back as well. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about this, if you can, if you've read this, whether you think it's good, bad, shit, or you just feel indifferent about it. Now, am I going to be covering more Spider-Man comics on this channel? I think so. Throughout the course of 2026, I reckon we'll see quite a few more Spider-Man comics, or maybe as early as 2025. Yes, that is the year that we're in, the year of Lord Talos, no less. Because as I'm recording this, I am waiting for the first volume of the Venom Omnibus to appear, because I did say that I like Venom, and when I got to the back of this book, there was that, which I'm very excited to get my hands on, reading various different Venom-inspired materials. And of course, Todd McFarlane is one of the artists in there, of course. And I also bought Maximum Carnage, which is a large story regarding Carnage. Well, there's got a load of different villains and heroes in that as well, all fighting against Spider-Man and a team of people, you know, trying to stop Carnage because he's just an OP symbiote, child offspring of Venom, and Spider-Man and Venom have to team up a little bit to take on Carnage as well. It's got Black Cat in it, it's got Cloak and Dagger, I believe the names are, like the husband and wife duo, who I now just think of my partner because they play a lot of Marvel Rivals and they love playing that character. So I'm really excited to get into that one, just to see like the grand interaction between Spider-Man and like the other villains and heroes that are in this. I don't actually know much more about that, to be honest, so yeah, I'm just really looking forward to getting my hands on them, and at some point I would like to read that big old first volume of Amazing Spider-Man, hopefully not for 100 smackos, maybe a bit less. That would be ideal. And I would also like to read the first volume of Ultimate Spider-Man as well, just so I can properly experience that, and also like revisit that issue 6 that I read all those many years ago, just like really honing on that nostalgia. And also it'll be a great place for me to start reading Spider-Man without having to worry about like 60 years of history. I do want to read the first run of Spider-Man 2099 as well, just because it's on public interest, and in my mind at the moment Spider-Gwen and then Ghost Spider, because I understand they're 2 different volumes. But I also want to read Spider-Man Noir at some point as well, because I learned about that one with Shattered Dimensions, which I think is everyone's introduction to Spider-Man Noir. That is, if they were only introduced with the Spider-Verse animated movies. Nicolas Cage is such a weird choice for that, I have to say. Like, I like Nicolas Cage, and as an actor, he's a bit of an eclectic so-and-so, but I don't think it was the right casting call. But you know, that's just my opinion on that one. So I would like to read Spider-Man Noir because that's a lot darker and I feel a lot more up my street. Just a little side tangent a little bit. I was absolutely fucking horrified with Shattered Dimensions, that the origin story with Uncle Ben, well, the end of Uncle Ben with that one, is the fact that Vulture eats him as a fucking cannibal. It's like, hot damn. And like, that's a real fucking frightening to think when you think, oh, Uncle Ben got killed by a killer. So, no, eaten by a fucking cannibal. Lovely stuff. So yeah, a lot darker and up my street, and I want to see what that one's like as well. So do let me know other Spider-Man comics that you think I should be reading. I also do know about the Superior Spider-Man, where Doc Ock takes over Peter Parker's body and becomes a superior Spider-Man. So yeah, there is so much Spider-Man out there that I just want to consume, and probably should consume or whatever, but I don't know how I'm going to go about doing these little reviews, or how frequent they're going to be, you know, because money and time and all the rest of it, because there are other projects and things I want to be doing on this channel that are more in line with the general TTRPG theme, as it were. And if the idea of being able to play as Spider-Man or your various other Spider people, or any other Marvel hero and villain in a TTRPG format is interesting to you, I'm going to leave links in the description below that allows you to play the Marvel role-playing Multiverse RPG game. I've completely butchered that name, but you'll have the proper name of it in the description below, as well as some other bits and pieces that I have written as well. Not for that game, but for other games as well. But if you purchase those books with those specific links, I get some of the money back because I'm an affiliate on Drive for RPG, and that sort of coinage is going to help me make content like this, so I can like go out my way and buy these different comics and omnibuses and all the rest of it, and so much more as well. And it means that you get books and I get books and you get content for free, which is absolutely amazing. Really, it's all in your favour. Really, it's a win-win chicken dinner situation for you, my amigos. Now, if you've got those already and much rather spend your money on Drive Through RPG on something else, find that affiliate code, copy it in the URL of anything before you add it to its cart, be it a Games Master Screen, book, get cards, whatever. And that has the same effect. It gives me a little bit of the financial compensation, so I'm able to produce more awesome content for you, which is absolutely amazing poggers shit. But if you can't do that, because I know times are hard on all of us, that's absolutely fine. Like, I'm not going to web you up in a building somewhere. If you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. It's absolutely fine. But what you should definitely do regardless is give the video a little cheeky little thumbs up, subscribe to the Lord by Night channel, and share this video with any and everyone who loves what I do. And I'll see you on the next upload, wherever that may well be for you. And until next time, Excelsior!